Good afternoon. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter School Association. Welcome to our weekly Thursday webinar, where we do a deep dive into a specific topic. This week, we're going to focus on the Board of Regents in the context of the recent meeting where a decision to not renew one of the strongest charter schools in Buffalo has raised a lot of questions and concerns in the charter community across the state. We've received a lot of questions from a lot of you, and so want to take the opportunity to address them all directly here, as well as to share our guidance about what this means for all schools and what all schools can do moving forward. I'm pleased to be joined today by Joe Polat, Executive Director of Buffalo Academy of Science, also known as BuffSci, the school in Buffalo that received such a terrible surprise after the May Regents meeting. You'll hear firsthand from Joe about his school, the decision by the Board of Regents, and how his school community is reacting. We also have with us Arthur Samuels, Executive Director, and Pagee Cheung, Principal of MESA Charter High School in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Arthur and Pagee have also had firsthand experience navigating the Board of Regents, and we appreciate that they are willing to share their experience here, especially because one of those things we want to underscore is that the Board of Regents has authority over and relevance for all charter schools in all parts of the state, including New York City. After we hear from Joe and then Arthur and Pagee, I'll give a general overview of the Regents, who they are, and how they are named, and what we recommend all schools take away from this conversation. We'll also take questions in Q&A as usual, using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So thank you, Joe, Arthur, Pagee, for joining us today. Joe, I want to start with you. Thank you again for joining us and for being willing to share your experience and the experience of your school community. I know a lot of people are wondering and are glad to hear from you directly. I also know that you may not want to brag, but for the sake of context setting, please can you start off by talking a little bit about your school's history and performance, and then share what happened at the May 14th Board of Regents meeting.
Thank you, Yumika. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to talk in this platform. Just to give you a brief background of BuffSci, Buffalo Academy of Science, one of the early schools in Buffalo, established in 2004, and actually the first charter high school in Buffalo. Since 2004, we have been serving underserved populations in Buffalo. We always have higher poverty rates than the district average. And we had, the school had some up and downs, but since 2011, the school is doing extremely well. And 2015, since our school is doing really good and producing great outcomes, we applied to extend our grade levels to include 5th, 6th graders, and we get no problem. And then in 2017, I believe, we wanted to have a complete K-12 program. We applied for K-4 edition also, and with no problem, we got that edition also because our outcomes speaks for themselves. And now we are serving K-12. The only problem with that configuration is 3 years ago we applied for K-4. Since our kindergartens started 3 years ago, now our kindergartens became 1st grade and 2nd grade, and they will be 3rd grade and 4th grade in upcoming years. That's why in our grade configuration, we have K-1, 2 currently, and 5 through 12. And with this renewal application, our school was up for renewal this June. That's why we submit our application, renewal application back in August with the addition of that 3rd and 4th grade to complete the gap in our grade span to become a K-12 school. So it's, in a nutshell, this is our history. This is where we are. And for the ones who doesn't know much about Buffalo and Buffalo Academy of Science, I will give you a few data points to show what outcomes that we have. One data that I will give you is the growth scores, because we really value the growth scores, because growth scores shows that the criticisms that the charter schools are cherry picking students, getting good students, and producing good results. But if you produce good growth scores, that shows that you're not cherry picking, you're just growing students and making an impact in their lives. That's why we always highlight the growth scores. Our growth scores for last 3 years is average 64 percentile. And the nearest growth schools across all public and charter schools in our region, the nearest one is 55. So there is a clear difference between our growth scores and our nearest followers. And there was a recent study from Credo, from Stanford University, about Buffalo schools. That study also showed that our school is performing as an outlier among the public and charter schools, and based on the last 3 years data. We have always about 95% graduation rate. Our high school ranked the top charter high school in state out of New York City. So when you rank from US News site, when you rank the charter high schools and except New York City schools, we are the top charter high school across the state. All our scores are well above state average, and our poverty rates are above the district. The reason that I'm giving this data, I don't want to sound also like advertisement, but I want to give you a sense of the shock that we had after that news coming from the Board of Regents. So with this data, with this outcome, with the positive school culture, we were super confident that the renewal would not be an issue. And even during that renewal meeting, I didn't watch the video because we were super confident. And then I received a text message saying that, oh, your school's renewal denied. And it was kind of, is this a bad joke type of thing? And when people asked to me what happened, why, I respond this way. What happened is, the biggest problem is actually what happened. I don't see that our charter schools non-renewal is a big problem. I see that the much bigger problem is what happened during that Board of Regents meeting. Because what happened during that Board of Regents meeting is we saw that the benchmarks set in the charter school performance framework does not mean anything, because it doesn't matter if you meet all those benchmarks or not. We also get the message that accountability outcomes, they don't make any sense. So there's no point of those. So that's why that's a much bigger problem than our school closure, I believe. So because if our school will be closed, there will be one school closed. But if there is a problem in the decision making in Board of Regents, and people are asking what happened and try to understand what is going on in Board of Regents meeting, that impacts all schools, and that's a much bigger problem, I guess. The other thing that I want to mention briefly, I don't want to take much of your time. Two things that I will briefly mention. One is our reaction. Of course, this was a shock for all school community, and all our parents, staff, and community members also, local community members, they all supported us. They all jumped in Zoom meetings. And there is a huge campaign going on, writing letters, emails. Newspaper articles are coming up this weekend. Also, there will be multiple articles. So there is a huge momentum going on, and it's good that we are getting together as a community, and we are taking action. So I hope things will change in June meeting. The second thing that I want to share with you is I realized that there is a much bigger impact of this decision than just the closing BuffSci. I realized this actually a few days ago. Also, I received a call from our bank and questioning about their loan, because we get a loan for our building, and we were looking for additional loan for our second building. So I realized that this increased the risk factor of charter schools for the banks. And this is not a joke. This is a real problem for all charter schools. Because if our risk factor in their calculation metrics increase, that means any charter schools is going to walk to get a loan. They'll get a higher rates and maybe shorter terms. I feel bad because I'm not the one who caused this issue, but if this is going to go to the metrics of the loans or mortgages, all of us might be impacted. The other impact is teachers. I get communication from few teachers that we interviewed and about to hire. They changed their minds. And also this will be the case for all charters, because teachers will think that the charters is not a safe spot, like there's no job security, even though if you do great things, no security. So we may be losing more teachers. The more teachers will be looking for safe harbors. That's going to be a long-term, another big impact, I believe. So overall, I would like to thank you for listening to me. I hope I didn't take your valuable time. But we had a shocking news, and we're really trying to understand what's going on, which is not too easy to understand. But also I would like to relay this message to all charter schools across the state, that this is not a small one school decision issue. This is going to have much bigger, longer impact for all of us.
Thank you very much, Scho, for sharing that. Just a question. You mentioned that you took some actions following the shock of hearing of the Regents' decision. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the specific actions you took, how you worked with your families, and some of the things that's happened?
Yeah. One thing is for my fellow charter school leaders, I can advise is, before any crisis happen, get good communications across your communities, the other charter schools. It pays off really well. Since the last 3 years, I have been working really closely with the communities, community leaders, and also other charter schools in the Buffalo region and in close areas. So with these relations built up, I feel super supported throughout this process, not just from our parents, teachers, because our parent teachers are really great. They really jump on, and even our students, they put their videos that they're calling the Regents and on the Facebook. It was really great. Like, teachers are really, really great. But also I feel like really supported. My other charter schools in Buffalo, they keep calling me, asking for support. They also motivate their parents. When I look at earlier times, we seems like we are in competition, but with this good community building, relations building, I feel super supported. So I advise everybody to not oversight this, like build your communities before any crisis happen. That helps a lot. Little details about what we did is we set up a committee, and especially I wanted to don't disturb the ongoing education. That's why I select few members of our teachers, the task force members, and I told all the others, principals, assistant principals, teachers, I told all the others that do not lose your focus from teaching. We're going to take care of this. So the task force took care of almost everything. We split into 4 groups. One group was for teachers and parents. They write the scripts, they call the parents, they organize the parent events. One group worked on the news and media. They reach out to news, media, and talk to them and put the words out there. One group work on the social media, and the other group work on the community leaders. And we met every day at 4:30, and it worked really well. We didn't disturb our education going on, but we get a really great momentum. We had a lot of radio shows support us. We had multiple news articles coming up, and there will be more coming up this weekend. We had featured in the TV also, and it's so far it's going really great, creating a lot of momentum, especially Facebook. It's really awesome. Almost all our postings reach to 4,000 to 5,000, so which is really good.
Thank you. And speaking of the social media, though, what's been the strongest? So we're shut down, right? We can't drop letters in the mail. We're not showing up to the state education building. How are you using social media? What's been most effective for you? What would you say has really been the biggest bang for your buck in terms of getting your supporters to speak out and on your behalf and garner that support online?
One thing that I should confess, maybe I wasn't a social media person before this. I don't have a Facebook account. I do have a Twitter, but not a Facebook user. And we needed to jump into right away. And I realized that there's a huge, big world out there. And almost all our parents, all our students, and a lot of community leaders, they're all in Facebook. They're all in Instagram. So what happened is on Friday, last Friday, I believe, that was the first news came out. And the first news, when the first news came out, it was sound like BuffSci is closed and parents are looking for options, that type of kind of a negative news. And that news received about 700 replies or something on the Facebook. And I said that let's spin it with a positive approach. And right after that, we posted 3 positive images of our school, highlighting our success. And all of them received about 5,000 that interactions. So those are all kind of wipe out that negative image. And I didn't know that. I wasn't a Facebook user. I didn't know the power of it. I see that almost all of our parents are in Facebook, and that was the kind of the platform that put us all together. And everybody is reaching the news from there. Everybody is kind of feeling the community on the Facebook. And then people start sharing their own stories, students, parents. But I realized that Facebook is a super strong platform. And some of the elected officials, I will say, they stop our page, they stop following our page. And also that was another sign that it is effective.
And that leads me to my next question, which was really about the response from decision makers, elected officials. Could you talk a little bit more about? So you said your Facebook page, you were unfriended by elected official on this. What other responses and what other types of reactions have you had with decision makers and people who can really sort of use their voice to really amplify what's happening among your charter school community?
Yes. That's another thing, like power of voice, power of citizenship is really strong. So from the first day, once we start sending those emails and phone calls, we receive responses. One of the Regents, I don't want to give the names, responded as regrets with his decision, and he right away said that he's going to change his decision. And the other one of them, actually, one of the Regents were really interesting. She was always against charters, and she always voted no. And in the first communication, she also told me that she's not going to change her decision, and that is it. But after a few days, I received another communication. She asked about the details, like, what is this? And then after a few days, I received another communication from her saying that I didn't know that I will be getting more information, type of like apology letter. So it really shows that the parents' power, the citizenship power is working. And I always told my parents, my community participants also, this shouldn't be thought as a BuffSci issue. This is a citizenship issue, and as responsible citizens, we need to raise our voices and tell our decision makers that you need to make decisions based on the rule and norms established, and it works. As if you have a point, if you can make your case, they will understand.
Just two more questions. First question is this: how are your students doing? How are your students doing? Your parents, your faculty, how are they holding up with all of this?
Yeah, honestly, I wanted to say we're doing great, but when I get the message that I get from Facebook to messages from my parents, students, it seems like everybody's strong. But on one-on-one conversation, and when I talk to myself, we are kind of really overwhelmed and in this uncertainty. And like in the pandemic is also there's an uncertainty, and this puts another uncertainty. And we keep feeling a lot of pressure. My teachers and my students, I believe, second grade students, I have a few parents called me and asked me that they cannot explain what's going on to their students. It is really bad. Like if you look at the surface, if you look at our Facebook, if you look at our messages, you may say that, oh, it's super strong. Everybody is on the board. Like we're, nothing happened. But when we turn into our quiet corners, it's really disturbing. I had teachers crying because they said that like I put my life in this. Like 15 years, I've been working day and night, and we did great things. What happened? Like they're crying. Like, but yeah, that there's a huge damage happened, but we are still strong. BuffSci strong. The good thing is, again, on the Facebook, on the social media, on the emails, on the communication, we are all embracing each other more. But I can't say that we're doing great. Honestly.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that we have a community out there in Buffalo, and I know it's growing out of state, and I know based on this phone call, what I'm seeing here, there are more people on this call who are growing to support and stand with you. I thank you especially for sharing that last part, which I'm pretty sure was tough. It was tough to hear how directly it affects people. We talk about this a lot of times, and the Regents did this and the Regents did that, but really there are second graders who don't know where they're going to school next year. There are parents who are worrying about that, and there are teachers who are worrying about their life's work, and everybody's doing that in the middle of a pandemic, as you said. Thank you so much for sharing that story. We will share, for everyone on the phone, we're going to give you information on how you can help support BuffSci at all charter schools. As Joe Polat said, this is happening to BuffSci directly, to their community, but it affects everyone, and it affects all charter schools. It affects any parent who would want to have a choice to send their good schools, and to make sure that when we invest in our institutions such as our Regents, that we have confidence that the decisions that they are making are based on sound policy, on their rules and regulations, and that we understand what they are. Joe, before I leave you, I want to just ask you one more question. I've kind of put you on the spot a little bit here. I'm going to imagine that maybe there might be a Regent out here watching this or who may see it later on a recording. If you could, what would you say to the Regents?
I will tell them this, like, first of all, we really do respect you all. We don't want to sound like when we raise our voices or our concerns, we don't want to sound like disrespectful or not accepting their decision making or not valuing their decision making. But also, I would like to tell them that two things. One is charter school students are also students, and they are representing all students, not just public school students, not just charter school students, private students. They are representing and they are making decisions for all students across the state. So it really feels, it hurts when you hear a regent says we and charters. So there's no we and charters because you are representing all schools. Like, and it really hurts. A regent says that charter school students should take the second seat. Uh, there shouldn't be any difference. A student is a student, and you are representing all students. And we like to be under your umbrella. We really respect your decisions. We really respect your criticisms. Like if you're not doing something right, we like to hear that. We like to fix that. But we like to see that you are representing all students, regardless of school, regardless of background, and don't classify them as charter school students, public school students. They're students. They're members of our community. And two is, I would like to tell them, the second thing is, their decisions are making a huge impact to the lives of thousands and millions. So when they're making decisions, I will ask them to please think this, like when you make a single decision, that's not just a single decision in that board. It impacts thousands of students, families, their lives, teachers. So that's why, like, you guys are on top of this state, representing millions of students, small or big. Your decisions are impacts the lives of thousands and if not millions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that story. We do stand with BuffSci. So I want to encourage everyone to visit. We have put up in our advocacy center, our action center, ways to get involved, ways to help, ways to support. And I just want to stress that this is not just about, as Joe said, Buffalo. This is about every charter school. It's that old adage, if it happened to anyone, right? If it happened to one person, it can happen to all of us. And so that our advocacy center, and we'll drop that link in the chat. It's https://nycharters.net/advocacy. You can also text BuffSci, BUFS-SCI to 1-855-465-5105. And if you text that number, you can join us in sending letters to the Board of Regents to express your disappointment with their vote on BuffSci. Please take the time to visit our Advocate Center, take some actions, help support BuffSci and the statewide charter community. Joe, thank you again. Stay with us while we go. We're going to move next to Arthur and Pagee. Thank you both for coming to participate as well today. I want to just give you the opportunity, please, to just share a little bit about MESA and let us know what led you all to be engaged with the Board of Regents and what your experience was.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, thank you for Nixon, thank you for Yamika and Anna for all of the support throughout the entire process. It's definitely been an adventure this year, and we couldn't have done it without just the love and support from you all. And thank you for inviting us to share our voices in this. So Art and I co-founded MESA 7.5 years ago. We were founded in 2013. We're about to graduate our 4th class of seniors, which we are very excited about and wish was under different circumstances, of course. MESA has, in our 7 years of existence, always outperformed our district, our state averages. We have last year graduated, we have a sizable student with disability and L population. Last year we graduated 100% of our Ls, which we're very proud of. Um, and every year, our graduation rate is over 90%. It's about to be over 90% again this year as well. So we work incredibly hard for that. And I think the thing that we're most proud of, actually, out of all the numbers that we generally share, is our student retention numbers. So our student retention is 96% across all the years that we've had, which means that we keep all of our students. And you know, it's very bittersweet and special. But now in this time, we're starting to check in with all of our parents of our seniors who've been with us for 4 years. And I think this has really felt like a really strong community for us, and something that just numbers can't paint. But we are very, very proud of the culture that we've built at our school. And I think that's one of the things that make our school stand out. Art, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Yomika, would you like us to talk a little bit about sort of this sort of specific interaction with the Board of Regents and what we were trying to do?
Your journey.
Our journey, yes.
Your journey, yes. Yes. Tell us, you know, what happened. You could start sort of set it up for us so we know what the context was, and then tell us what happened. Yes, please.
Sure, of course. So we have always been a school, and this was something that was really important to me and Pagee when we founded the school. We wanted any growth to be very organic. We wanted it to make sense. We wanted it to be, because it was the right thing for the school and for the community to do. And so even in our first, couple of years, we posted pretty high Regents scores right out of the gates, and we started hearing, so when are you going to see MESA 2? When are we going to have MESA 2, MESA 3? And we were like, not for a while. We want to make sure that we know what we're doing. Having one really good freshman year and, doing well on living environment and algebra is very different than running multiple successful 9 through 12 high schools. After 5 years, we wanted to grow, and we felt like we had done a good job. And we had a leadership and talent pipeline in sort of, lined up behind us. And at first we thought about opening a second high school, and we actually did apply to open a second high school, and that was approved. But as anyone from New York City knows, there is the charter cap. And so we were sort of on the, the list of those in kind of purgatory, right? With permission to open a school and the ability to open a really good school, but we're not able to do so. And once we weren't able to do that, we started thinking about middle school. And honestly, we had been asked a lot by our parents earlier to open a middle school. And we'd always sort of said, no, we're high school people, we're high school people, we're high school people. We don't do middle school, we do high school. But we had a lot of parents who had, a child at MESA and then a younger child, and had been saying, I really don't want to send my kid to school in the district. And the middle schools in District 32 are not, what a lot of parents want. And so it made us sort of step back and think a little bit more like, okay, maybe we should consider this really seriously. And we thought a lot about it. We talked with our board, we talked with our families, we talked with our staff, we talked with our authorizer. We understood that politically it might be a little more viable and a little easier to try it in a different borough. But we felt really, really strongly that we had made a commitment to the families of Bushwick. Those were our parents. We wanted to prioritize them and their, and their children, because they were, like Pagee said, our family. And so we submitted an application to expand down to a middle school, and open grades 6, 7, and 8. And so we submitted that application in January. We were met with, Yomika, I'm not sure sort of how much detail you want me to go into with this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep going. We were met with an enormous amount of, I would say, very strategic, mostly teachers union and teachers union ally directed resistance.
Arthur, I appreciate your diplomacy. I was at that public hearing, and I will say it was organized and not community driven.
Yes. Yes.
So unpack that for us. So what happened?
So there was an enormous amount of misinformation spread. So one thing was that we had said in our application, and had been very sort of transparent with elected officials. We had reached out to elected officials. Some had responded to us, some hadn't. But we had said, we are agnostic about whether this will be in public or private space. We just want to open our school. We are more than happy to do private space, because space obviously in New York City is, very, very big consideration. We need to apply for public space to the DOE to get it. That's how you secure the funding for the facility, but we don't care. Organizers went around and told families of our co-located schools that we had always had a very, very, very good relationships with, that we were trying to close their school, kick them out, and that their 8th graders wouldn't be allowed to graduate this year. That if MESA was approved, we would immediately close their school and take all of their space. It was said that we were trying to rename the building. I mean, that was literally a thing that someone said, you're trying to rename the building. So people were sort of whipped into a frenzy. We know that kids from the other schools were pressured to come and testify at the public hearing against us because they had siblings who went to MESA. We had parents who wanted to speak on our behalf, but were afraid that their children at other schools would be retaliated against. There was really, really, really nasty stuff on social media about it. And at the public hearing, we always have taken, sort of like Joe indicated with his school, a very positive, very community-oriented approach. We have always been sort of, we just care about kids. We don't, like Joe said, we don't say these are charter kids, these are district kids, these are our kids, these are your kids. We build relationships with kids from other schools in our building. We know them by name. We'll talk to them. A lot of them become our students when they get to 9th grade. That had always been our approach, and none of that mattered. And sort of that was how we went into the hearing. And then when our parents spoke, they were, told that they didn't belong here, that they weren't from Bushwick, even though many of them had lived there their entire lives. They were
speak English.
They were told to speak English. Their accents were made.
They were yelled at from the back of a large high school auditorium. Go back to where you come from. Speak English.
Yeah.
It was one of the most objectionable displays of humanity that I have been personally witness to in my life.
And then the hearing itself was mischaracterized. So we probably had about 170 people there. Those in opposition also had the same amount. They talked about organized charter resistance and charter money. They had T-shirts that they had all printed up that said the same thing. And then on social media, it was portrayed as 350 people show up to this auditorium in opposition to MESA Charter School. And that wasn't, so as we sort of engaged more with the regents, so Regent Cashin, Kathy Cashin is the regent for Brooklyn. She ultimately came to visit our school, and I think Pagee can probably speak more to kind of that meeting. But by the time she came to us, that was the sort of characterization that had been received. And I think that was because we had sort of tried to take an above the fray approach. We had, we'd been slammed on social media. We had not responded to that. Our feeling was like, we're not going to dignify this by getting into the mud. We had sort of tried to take a little bit of a back seat. And I think, if we had it to do again, and we can talk more about what we would do differently, but I think if we had it to do again, we would approach that differently, because I think by the time Regent Cashin came to visit our school, that narrative had already been formed for her, and maybe for other regents as well. And so we were kind of fighting an uphill battle at that point.
Yeah, I think we were definitely put in a position to be reactive and spent a good chunk of our time demystifying and debunking a lot of the myths that were put out there. And, as Anna is describing it, I just had a flashback of just emotionally how heartbreaking and gut-wrenching it was seeing little kids go up on stage having to kind of say, to fight for a space. and to be vilified, but feel like you have your hands tied and not be able to really respond truly was challenging. And I think that the biggest lesson that we had was, while we couldn't respond and we were not able to, I think our parents really wanted that voice too. And so I think for us, as we think about the way that we engage with the Regents, we had ultimately, when we started to speak with Regent Cashin, she was very gracious and wanted to spend the time to talk to our families. But at that point, it was already after that hearing. And we really wish that she got a chance to see our parents and talk about our parents, talk very positively and passionately, instead of having to refer back to like, no, those were lies. No, we love our school, and being in a defensive posture. So I think that's one thing that we really think. And I think from just for someone who hasn't been to that hearing, to just say we basically had to set up a parent session with our families to prevent them from having PTSD. They like, a lot of our parents left because they thought that it might go violent, the session. We had parents who were bullied outside. We had parents who were screamed at. And we had to do a session to debrief that hearing, to just tell them that we love them and we support them, because we had gone into that session saying, look, we're going to take the high road and we might face opposition. I don't think we were prepared for the level of opposition that we faced. And to what Art said earlier, all of the, I think it then ended up being a game of telephone on who's interpreting what they got out of that session afterwards, whether it was through social media or through media or through political electeds, trying to decipher what really happened at that hearing when they weren't really there. And so when we talked to Regent Cashin, she originally said that she had heard that they were all at Tweed, that there was a huge parent opposition against us at Tweed, which was not true. And then we had to kind of talk about, okay, no, these were like, paint the scene for her of like, our parents were there too, our parents support us, our parents love us. But just thinking through of how we would approach it again, we were really thinking that the fact that we had over 90% graduation rate, the fact that we got along with our co-located school, the fact that we have done right by our community was sufficient to speak for us. And it just wasn't, to what Joe said earlier. Like, it's heartbreaking that that's not enough. And I think a lot of it is, maybe it is enough, but I think a lot of the messaging is definitely murky unless we're the ones controlling it. And so taking a more active role in controlling the messaging is something that we've learned.
And I think I would add to that from sort of a lessons learned standpoint. Similarly, I think we had spent 7 years cultivating relationships with our elected officials, and we had done, lots of events with elected officials. We had invited elected officials to speak with our students and to our parents and at our school, and done a lot of engagement and a lot of positive social media presence. And I would say had always sort of positioned ourselves very much as, not the demonstrating very, very aggressively. We let our work speak for ourselves. We let our community speak for itself. We collaborate with everyone. But I think when push came to shove, we didn't hold our elected officials accountable in the same way. And I think, our parents are citizens, and our parents are voters, and our parents are residents, and they live there, and their children matter. And I think, one thing sort of looking back on that we really should have challenged very quickly was the narrative we allowed the narrative to become, I don't want to use passive voice, we allowed narrative to become, if this charter opens, it will take kids from the district. So again, to what Pagee said, it was never about anything that MESA was doing poorly. And it sounds like, Joe, that was a similar thing for your school, right? This was never, this school is bad, this kid is kicking kids out, this kid is, because we don't. But it was almost, they're too good and it's not fair to let them compete with other kids. And I don't say that to brag, but it's the truth. And what happened was, there was we can't let them potentially take away our kids. And what we should have done was reframed it as, what you're saying is you don't want parents to have the choice about where they send their children, right? It's not that MESA may take some kids from the district. It's that parents might choose MESA because parents have the right to choose what the best school is for their children. And we should have been just again and again and again and again and again, broken record on that. And we should have had our parents saying that. And we should have made it very uncomfortable for elected officials to be able to say that, without being in front of parents. And I think one thing that we're both very proud of is there was nothing that we said in any forum that we would not feel comfortable repeating in any other forum, including, to those who are in opposition to charter schools. But I think, others sort of played to their audience a little bit more. And I think we should have made it uncomfortable for some of our elected officials, not in a negative way, but by saying like, okay, these are parents, this is where they want their children to go. And we did not do that. And I think elected officials, to their credit, they listen to their constituents, right? They want to represent the interests of their constituents. I think what we did not do was allow their constituents who were MESA parents to really, really, really fully have their voice heard. And so I think if we were to do it again, and I think we will do this when the time comes for our renewal, I think we'll have to be much more active about that. And I think, like Pagee said, our parents are champing at the bit, right? Like they want that. They want to express how much the school has meant to them and how much they care about it and how much they love it. So I think we are really, 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 that's sort of one of our big takeaways from this.
Thank you both. It sounds like I see that in the chat you got people fired up by your comments and really by your assessment of lessons learned. So thank you especially for that. I feel like there's a webinar in our future about organizing around our own advocacy, particular to events, to things when we want expansions and renewals, how to build parent engagement, how to really give parents the opportunity to express their voice. And for schools to be able to counter some of the negative and outrageous stuff that happened that you talked about at your hearing. So thank you again for that, and I look forward to having more conversations with you about your experiences and how we can take some of those lessons learned and turn them into best practices for everyone. So thank you. Arthur, Pagee, Joe, thank you again for being here. We're going to just do a quick overview of the Regents. I know we're running out of time, folks, here. We have to get out at 5 o'clock, but I just want to say it was well worth it. Thank you again for sharing your thoughts and comments. So I'm just going to run through a quick overview of the Regents. We're going to turn it over for any questions that might be in the Q&A. And just to give everyone just a quick overview, background of the Regents. The Board of Regents is 17 members. They're elected by the New York State Assembly, and they serve a 5-year term in a volunteer capacity. 13 of the Regents represent a specific geographic region, and there are 4 Regents who are at large. You can find a list of the Regents and the areas that they represent on the NYSED website. It's www.regents.nysed.gov. You'll see that coming up in your chat. If you don't know the Regents for your school, visit that site to please find out. As you can see from our guests here today, knowing who your Regents are is important. Reaching out to them, understanding where they are, and allowing them to understand who you are and who your schools are and who your students are is important. The Regents meet once a month to create the overall educational policy for the state, including charter schools. For the 4 charter schools authorized by SUNY, the Regents still ultimately approve the action of the SUNY Charter Schools Committee. In that regard, though, the vast majority of cases for SUNY, they approve without significant debate. Also of particular importance right now, the Regents also select the Commissioner of Education. There's currently an interim commissioner, Tim Tahoe, and the search for the new commissioner is on. The commissioner sets the overall tone and direction for education in the state. Just by way of example, you may remember John King as commissioner, and he enacted significant new policies emphasizing student outcome data. His successor, Commissioner Elia, made changes and essentially removed those policies. So who becomes the commissioner really has an important role and has an impact on everything that happens for our schools. The Regents meet monthly. That's important. Right now, they're meeting virtually, right? Under normal circumstances, they would be at the SED building, the State Education Building in Albany. In the current context, you can watch or listen to the meetings remotely. It's important. There is a recording of the, I'll say, the now infamous May meeting, right? And you should take a look. You should take a look at that meeting and listen to some of the remarks and see what was said about students, and particularly charter school students. They're still kids, and then some of the stuff that you might hear on that recording, you might wonder if somebody might have forgotten that. So please take a look at that. Please take the time to participate, or at least view the Regents meetings. The chancellor of the Regents, Board of Regents, is Betty Rosa, and I'm sure you've heard that name over and over again. She's essentially the chair of the Regents. She's the boss, if you will, elected by the other Regents to be the chair. The Regents are typically selected to be Regents. They're nominated because they have a long career in education, something to do with leadership roles in education. Sometimes their role in a community setting or a community community leadership capacity, or it's based on geography. About half of the Regents are in their first term. Others have been appointed to a second term. For example, Regents Willis was just named to the board this year. And if you look at the list of Regents on the website, you'll see with the way that they're listed is actually in order of tenure. So we talked a lot about the Regents today, and we've heard disturbing, disappointing, heartbreaking, the realities of what the Regents' actions and the actions related to the Regents' work can wrought. What's next for us to do is what we would recommend is two things. One, for your school, and one, to stand with BuffSci. For your school, identify who your Regent is and include them in your future outreach and engagement. Invite them to your virtual school events. Tell them what you're doing. Keep them sort of in the loop of your activities. Email your distribution list. Add them to your distribution list so they get updates and news about your school. When school resumes in person and brick and mortar, invite them to visit and see your school in action. And if you're anticipating a change to your school or your charter, let us know so that we can help you navigate the process. Look for more communications from us as well. I do believe that we do need to probably focus on some organizing and advocacy engagement and best practices to help everyone. So we will try to see if we can put some things together and ask you to join us with that. And finally, stand with BuffSci. Immediately after this webinar, you'll receive an email to ask you to take two actions. First, visit our Access Center to send a letter to the Board of Regents expressing your disappointment in their decision. We mentioned that before. Please do that. We need more voices. We need everyone to speak out on behalf of, again, it's on behalf of BuffSci, but it affects all the charters in the state. If it can happen at BuffSci, it can happen in any school. Reach out to your parents and families to ask them to take a testimonial video explaining why they chose your school and post it to social media with the hashtag #WeStandWithBuffSci. Let the Regents, let the schools, let the community, the districts, the elected officials, everyone know that these parents are choosing your schools. They are choosing your schools, and then they can let them know why. We can show them better than we could tell them, right? Please keep an eye on our Action Center. There will be additional actions leading up to the June Board of Regents meeting, again, where we are optimistic that with your help, with everyone's voice, the Regents will reconsider the vote on the BuffSci and really correct the mistake, and I'm going to call it a mistake, that was made in voting against good charter schools. That should not happen. All right, we're going to turn it over. We have a few more minutes, and I apologize. Again, we're running this late, but do we have any questions in the chat, Anna?
We do, and for the sake of time, I'm going to do double duty of asking and answering some of them, and then Joe, I'm going to look to you because there are some that are looking ahead to what might be in the future for BuffSci. So one of the questions is the Board of Regents reasoning private? So the Board of Regents is a public forum. Their meetings are public. Under normal circumstances, they meet in person in the State Education Building in Albany. And if you're ever interested when life returns to normal and attending in person, we're happy to help. It's actually somewhat complicated to do, but we are happy to help. In the current context, you can listen or watch, And we'll make sure to push out the live stream link for the upcoming June 8th meeting. But you cannot participate, and it is not obvious to the board in this remote setting who is watching. And so that's something that we've been talking a lot about and trying to figure out if there are creative technical ways to really introduce a greater degree of transparency, in particular on this issue and in particular in this upcoming meeting. So when the question of is the reasoning private, it's not. It's an open board meeting and the conversation is public. The rationale that was offered by the Regents for rejecting BuffSci's application was related to its expansion and the potential financial impact that that expansion would have on the district. So sort of an old chestnut, and in many ways, if you do watch the recording of the May meeting, you can see that directly preceding the discussion of BuffSci's renewal application is a discussion about the potential for financial difficulties for districts. And so it really seems like BuffSci was made more of an example of than a decision made on the merits of SCD Charter Office's recommendations, the data associated with the school. So, and the decision was to not renew. So it was not just to deny the expansion, it was to not renew. So someone asked the question of if they were denied the chance to grow or if it was actually for a closure. So it was a non-renewal. And so this is where, Joe, I'm gonna look to you because folks are asking questions about what's next for BuffSci. How are you guys thinking about this? Are you pursuing or are you contemplating legal action? And so want to give you a chance to answer directly.
Thank you. First of all, the rationale, I see that a lot of people asking why, and we're asking why. As you explained, the rationale explained as a financial impact to the district. But this is not rational because in the same meeting, in like 15 minutes, there were other 5 schools, and 2 of them was great schools in Buffalo, the Health Science and CSET. They're also really great schools for our community. They got approved. So if the people are asking if it is financial impact, is just the BuffSci has financial impact, not the other schools. That's why that doesn't make sense. If it is the expansion, the reason, that also doesn't make sense because technically we're not expanding. We're filling the gap between 2nd and 5th grade. And more problematic is in the same meeting, one of those charter schools is expanding and got approved. So mathematically, when you look at it, people are asking if it is financial, then none of them should get approved. If it is expansion, none of them should get approved. But they mentioned those as an excuse, but that's why rationally it doesn't make any rational decision. That's why I wanted to highlight that. That's the biggest problem. That makes the Board of Regents are not making rational decision. That's a much bigger problem. For us, we will be looking for June meeting, June 8th, I believe, Board of Regents meets again. And we are hoping that this decision will be overturned and we'll go back to our lives and fix our wounds. If not, July 9th, we're planning to start legal action. We are serious on that. But overall, what's going to happen is we believe that the legal action will give us another year, and the school will not be closed right away. And throughout that year, we'll keep our fight because we believe that we have a strong case, and we believe that one way or another, the BuffSci will be serving these students for many years.
Thank you, Joe. And we at the association are trying to figure out technical ways to host a watch party. And so when and if we can figure out how to triangulate that, we'll be sure to let folks know. I'll turn it back over to you, Mika, to close out.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say again, as I said already, thank you for sharing your stories with us, sharing your time. and your information. Everyone on the phone, thank you for spending the hour with us again this week. Please visit the Action Center, take a look at the emails when they come through. Stand with BuffSci, stand for all charters. Someone asked what would be a powerful message regarding charter schools in lieu of or in light of they're taking our kids back. I don't know what that is, but send me some emails. I'm happy to let's figure it out. Maybe it's charter educated and proud. But please, let's stay active. Let's stay on this. Let's stay involved. Thank you again for everyone for your time. We will see you next Tuesday when we will have our Tuesday webinar and talk about all of the news to date. In the meantime, have a safe Memorial Day weekend. See you then.
Stand with you, Joe.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.